Hello, Nerdaholics. Hello.
Hello.
Very unconventional and special episode of our Doctor Who Classic Reviews. We're not doing it live this week because technical difficulties. We'll just say that. And we have a very special guest joining us this evening. He is our best friend, Harry Shamadai. Harry, how you doing, mate?
I'm good. Hello, everybody.
He's the
Isolation
Doctor Who guru.
is certainly taking its toll.
Yeah.
Looks like everyone's survived.
In our infernal prisons.
yeah.
Oh, and obviously, Jack, what are you drinking this evening? I actually stepped it up and got. Actually, my cousin gave me another supply run today, so she's dropped me off some nice beers, which is cool.
Because, Sean, for the viewers at home, we were supposed to start about an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
Well,
see, you can say that, but I can just edit that out. So it's like, forget
it's going to be a very edited version. I'll be commenting on this later.
Yeah. So it's like, I did put it up on Twitter a few days ago about, right, let's do let's get this trainer rolling with Robots of Death. And I said, right, we'll let you know, we'll do it on Thursday and I'll let you know a time. But now I'm just going to put, we already did it. We'll just put it up.
Technical difficulties, sorry. We'll do a StreamYard thing like next week or something once you've got new headphones or whatever you want to do and how you want to do it. So
yeah, I need to sort out my fucking audio setup because it's a pain in the arse.
It's fine.
Anyway, right. So this is actually Harry's favourite episode of all time, is it not, sir?
Oh God, yeah. This episode never ceases to put a smile on my face. I really do enjoy it. And yeah, I've watched it constantly, as in when I was a little kid, all the way to being a fully fledged over the 30-year-old adult. So
it's when it's enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
So this Harry, this is the same Harry who is like, the Doctor Who guru. He's the one who basically inspired us to start talking about Doctor Who on our channel. He's like the master. Okay, you thought we knew a bit. He knows everything. So we're just sort of carrying on his legacy, and he's joined us.
Well, I do try to know everything. The story starts, I always find it starts really like Alien, and I know it sounds kind of really a bit of a strange comparison, but they come out of cryogenics in Alien, and they literally just start by being in the crew quarters and having a chat. I suppose what's different in Robots of Death is obviously they're having a chat, but the chat's very relevant to what's going to happen. But it's a nice... It eases you in and, introduces you to the crew members, and like the captain's playing chess with the rock robot. Dask is like trying to tell them about robots, like, they can't kill people. It's all, it's all normal. It's all normal stuff, and you kind of get eased into it. You get to see all the characters, and it's just really nice. I like the beginning quite a lot.
No, it is nice. I mean, I suppose the very beginning is obviously the sand mine bit. And you're like, oh, right, well, what's going on here? But when you actually see it inside, and there's like these bourgeois mining people who are just like you say, just casually talking about how much money they're going to make this year.
Yeah.
It's all very white collar. They don't look like miners. It's kind of just goes it's a decadence of where they are and what they're like now at this point in their period of history of their society. So everyone's like, yeah, robots are doing everything, we're just chilling, playing chess.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, though, that they are still specialists in what they do. So when they do end up by getting out and doing the work properly, they make money. That's the whole point of what they're doing there. But obviously, they spend, is it like 9 months on a sand miner? So you kind of have to kind of keep people not losing it.
Entertained, yeah. Alive.
It's like, there's a difference between entertained because they've got like a football that they can kick around or whatever, and having a great big luxury lounge.
But because they earned it. They've worked for that because they've earned the money to be able to buy it from lots of sand.
It just helps show off a bit of the society and the world building and everything, doesn't it? It's kind of just there's sorts of little bits and pieces that you can sort of see, you can infer from the dialogue, you can see from just like how everyone sort of carries themselves and what everything looks like. Just you can see what the world's like. You can see it's very decadent and over the top. I like using the word decadent. I'm going to use that a lot now.
Well, the fact that they have basically robots as servants just kind of shows you just what kind of people they are. You know what I mean?
And the robots aren't all unattractive either. Like they're not unpleasant to look at.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that.
Unnerving.
Yeah, Jake's like, oh, hang on a minute. No,
Don't you start doing the Futurama like, yeah, robots and people having sex. Ooh.
Phobic.
You phobe, you robophobe.
Well, there's robophobia in this, but it's not the same kind of phobia. Anyway.
Yeah, fear of robots rather than fear of shagging robots.
And then once you get past like the first scene, you get into the TARDIS, and to be honest, you get the first explanation for this why the TARDIS is bigger on the inside than the out.
It's iconic as well, and it's such a clever explanation, but it's simple. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh well, you know, which box is bigger? Well, that one. All right. Now which box is bigger? Well, that one. Well, no, it's this one. But hang on, that's silly. That's trans-dimensional technology. The Time Lord science. Oh, it's a boring subject anyway. But you know, but it's like,
how can it territory materialize inside a box? It's like a box inside a box. I just told you.
yeah. But the way that like the camera shoots that, it's like it's right behind the box, so it gives the viewer the perspective.
And the way that it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, it's so quotable. There's so many good lines, like to the rational mind, nothing is inexplicable, only unexplained.
Yeah.
I just still stand there like, yeah, I'm with the Doctor on this.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10.
If you go out to mean them no harm, they won't harm you. 9 times out of 10. Okay. Do you know what? That laser gun would have come in handy if she was about to pick up. So, well.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
But then the story would have been over in the first episode.
Yeah, she would have just shot them all because she's a bad.
Yeah.
She still stabs one. You know, she's trying to go out like a pro. Stab it with a knife later on.
Although there's an issue I have with that scene, and I'll tell you about it later. Because there's a clear. Oh, never mind. We'll get to it.
Yeah, she almost hits the cameraman with a knife. Yeah, I know.
Well, there's that, but there's also the bit where it's like when the robot's coming after her, she runs around him, and there's the door is right there, and she chooses not to go out the door and runs back round, and then goes back and throws the thing over his head, and then runs out. It's like you could have just run out straight away, but never mind. Just as my thing I noticed, I was like, "Oh,
don't worry. When we get to that bit, we can talk about that. It's brilliant. In one of the special features, they talk about it. Like the first take, she threw the knife, cock-handedly threw it, and it almost hit the cameraman. Yeah. So when they did the second take, everyone just moved away from the set and was like, "Yeah, I ain't going anywhere near her with that knife in her hand." But then bearing in mind, she was wearing contacts in the 70s where she couldn't see shit anyway.
Basically, the thing is, I've kind of focused my notes into kind of 6 points that I'm going to kind of cover, and it's probably more towards the end after we talk about the episode. One is characterization. So basically, the characters and how they're portrayed, right? So it's just like, is the Doctor the Doctor? Do they feel like the Doctor? Blah, blah, blah. Is the leader like the Anyway.
Second drink, by the way. Yeah.
Next thing would be arcs and growth. So, do any characters have any character arcs and any character growth that's worth talking about? After that,
I can definitely think of 3 characters that go through character growth in Robots of Death. I'll explain that later. But...
Yeah.
Then there's the setting of the world.
I should say the 3 characters that survive go through.
I was going to say, the ones that are there right.
I just realised, everyone else gets killed off quite innocuously. But
the commander who starts off as an arsehole and turns out to be, he's still an arsehole.
Still an arsehole. He's still the boss that we've all had.
Yeah.
Then world building. Just kind of like, what's the world like? Just kind of get themes and bits different. Then it's themes. Plot in general, and then the last thing is entertainment value.
What we can do is we'll bring up those 6 points towards the end, and then we can talk through them because there's quite a lot to digest there actually. Because
the thing is, it's kind of like if the more of those you hit, in theory, the better the story is. So it's a way of kind of like marking it out of 6 or whatever. If you've got those, you've basically got it down. If there's
That's what Chris Chibnall should have paid attention to. Oh, I had to get a little dig in there. It wouldn't be right without a little dig.
Do you want to get one out? Do you want to get a few more out before we go any further? Any more chin balls things you want to say?
The thing is, they appear when they appear. You know, some things might,
and they'll get edited out in the final cut anyway, so it's fine.
Exactly.
you get the Doctor and Leela. They end up on the sand miner. They get mistaken for stowaways.
Yeah,
which is kind of that's a Doctor Who trope if I ever saw one. You get some amazing dialogue in episode 2 when they actually finally come face to face with Ivanov, and they're all kind of like, oh.
Well, it's when he's just the best bit is just when he's like, "Would you like a jelly baby?" Shut up!
Do you know what? The funniest part about that scene is the robot. Watch the robot. The robot watches the jelly baby fly out of his hand, and the robot's just like,
"Please wait here."
Simple no thank you would have sufficed.
Yeah,
brilliant. It's the robot. It's the robot that makes me laugh every time. The robot's just watching the jelly babies fly out of his hand and hit the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, that is really sad. Shut up!
Shut up! Yeah, there's not. I suppose with the first episode, obviously, it's mainly about them finding themselves in a big metal box.
Well, they just set up the scene, They set up the scene, and the first person gets killed by a robot. You see it clearly. So the audience knows exactly what's going on straight away. So you've got this whole. It plays on. It's a really old idea. The Isaac Asimov robots can't harm humans. Is that?
Yeah.
It's not original, but it's done very well.
Oh yeah, it's a great interpretation of that story, as well as things like Agatha Christie with the sort of murder mystery element to it as well.
Whodunit. Well, they're all kind of. For some reason, once they get them together after they found out that this one of the crew members has been killed, and then there's a lot of recrimination, and then
everyone just start blaming each other.
Yeah, they start blaming each other, and this is what I was talking to Jack earlier. There's a point where Zilda interrupts Cass, and Ivanov goes up to her and goes, "Well, the people from the founding families don't interrupt each other, do they, Zilda?" And you're trying to get this kind of like a subtle hint that in this world that there is the hierarchy. You know, the original colonists are regarded in much higher regard than the people who came later. And you got this kind of like it starts to see resentment that Ivanov has towards them. So there's nice undertones.
Find out what happens with his backstory later on. You think, oh shit, yeah, there's more to him than meets the eye. He's not just like a fucking tyrant. You know what I mean?
Well, he is the way he is because he's successful.
Yeah.
I think we have 3 dead bodies by episode 2.
Yes.
Yeah, the kill count's quite high in this story.
Well, it's funny you should say that. When it turns out to be on screen or off screen, you've only got one on-screen death at that point. There's 3 dead crew members, but actually only one actually appears on screen.
Yeah. Robot.
Oh, I love Chubb. It's just the way he's just like he does the whole little anecdote at the very beginning of the story, and it's like there was a fox therapist in Keldor City who felt all around the joint, and then pulled his arm off.
It's just like I wouldn't be anywhere near. Wouldn't let those things anywhere near me. I think.
And I love the fact that Borg gets like blamed for it, or he's the first to be accused of killing Chubb. And Borg's like, look, he got on my nerves, but I wasn't going to kill him.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't like each other, but I didn't wish death upon him.
All that dialogue and interplay just flows so well in those scenes.
It does.
There's a lot of chemistry in that room that seems to sort of go really well, and I think the supporting cast is.
It's one of the strongest supporting casts, like in any story, past or present of Doctor Who, because you can tell they're very much at the top of their game at that point, and they set the scene very well before even Doctor and Leela are even on screen. Do you know what I mean?
And then when they are, the whole thing lights up. You know what I mean? When the Doctor and Leela are there in the room, and Ivanov starts doing his, he starts interrogating them.
Yeah.
And it's just it's so quotable. It's so quotable. So what are you doing on my mine? Just standing here talking to you.
Yeah. Well, it's a small world.
So over 6 million miles of uncharted desert, and you just happen to stumble across us. I think it's also a coincidence that once you turn up, 3 of my crew members are dead. Yes, sorry, I thought it was a rhetorical question. Yes,
it's a purely coincidence. But it's the way he doesn't finish that. It's the way he doesn't finish the word rhetorical question. He just goes, "Oh, I thought it was a rhetorical question." Yes. That coincidence. That's the timing. He's just Tom Baker is just like at his comedic best.
And there's also another beautiful little bit of detail. This is in my notes, but there's a lovely bit of detail because Paul has a conversation with Ivanov earlier when they discover Cass's body, and he talks about the double bluff.
Yeah.
And when Ivanov mentions the double bluff to the Doctor in front of everybody, you see Paul's reaction in the background. He starts laughing to himself.
Yeah.
This is a nice, just little detail, little character bits where you just go, yeah, that's how I would react. Like if I mentioned it and they were just like, he's just stolen my idea and brought it out in front of these complete strangers, like, oh, okay, I see how this is going.
But it's funny how the Doctor always he's a bit like Columbo in this episode. It's like he knows what's going on pretty much from the get-go, just from being around them. And he's like the fact that he goes, there's a third possibility that you've all overlooked, but he doesn't get to reveal that possibility until a bit later on. And then when Paul goes, so what was the possibility?
That's quite enough out of you.
The view, yeah. Again, another fucking the doors, rip them open. There's so many quotables. And obviously, how can you forget the inverse ratio quote, man? That's
it's one of the best insults. You're the typical example of the inverse ratio between the size of the mouth and the size of the brain. Stick a murderer.
And it's like, hang on, you're not helping your cause, mate, because you're trying to strangle the Doctor, and these people are being strangled. So it's like,
it does make you sort of start thinking.
Yeah.
And then literally the storyline kind of deteriorates from a whodunit into this is a world-ending event. Not only a world-ending event, but a world-ending event for any civilization that's based on robots. Yeah. That's what I love about the stakes in this story. It starts off as a normal situation, which is then a whodunit. Then as the episodes start to progress, it then now becomes like this situation's way bigger than what we're having to deal with. And that's
it's just the casual way that the Doctor goes, oh, I suppose, he goes, what happens if the robots are the ones killing? Well, I suppose
it's the end of this
civilization. Yeah, and it's just like, well, yeah, because he's seen it before. So it's like, because he's like, oh, you're not the only civilization with, a robot-based society. So he's seen a lot of shit. He's seen how it can end badly.
One of my little nitpicks for this episode, and this is in the episode's fault, I think it's more the fact that we've got better televisions these days than back in the 70s.
Oh, Jack, you blaspheme.
Picture quality, that's what it is.
Or the tinfoil shoes.
Yeah.
There's one moment where Tapen, what's his name?
Taron Capel. We'll call him Taron Capel because no characters called it until later.
Well,
they don't give anything away.
Yeah. There's this one moment he's talking to the robot over the computer screen. Now you're not meant to know who it is yet, so they kind of really blurred it out. But the effect is like a shitty 70s effect. Now back on the shitty 70s,
obvious. Yeah.
Now it's kind of, I'm watching this back, so I can exactly see who you are. Okay.
But then I think maybe by that point it was like, okay, this is the biggest clue, and you're like, oh no, it can't be him. And then it turns out it is, and then it's like, or it could just be, they weren't really very good at hiding his face. No, we did wear the mask.
No,
before
the shroud. Yeah, you're quite right.
Listen, I think it really is just a case of like back in the 70s when this was first being shown. Was it 70s or 80s?
70s.
Yeah. You have to remember though, I think that scene's quite late though. It comes in quite late. Like if that kind of happens, then the robots start killing people. and then you find out who he is. It's kind of leading you. I mean, it's one of those ones. Is you know that one of them's making it happen, and by that point, you've only got about 4 or 5 crew members left that it could possibly be. It's like there isn't many people left by that point. It's like it's like a one in 4. I think it's 1 in 4 of the crew members that are left at that point. It could be. So, I mean, if we concentrate on characterization of the characters that appear in the story, I mean, the Doctor and Leela is always going to be a constant. So there's no real reason other than it's Leela's second story.
Yeah.
After she's just joined the TARDIS. So that's why she's got this whole idea about the yo-yo being magic and making the TARDIS work. So there's some nice interplay between the Doctor and Leela. But, she's there doing a bit. She's being competent. I think she's one of the more competent companions we had at the time.
So, certainly in a hands-on way as well.
Yeah.
She can be the one that kicks the arse, you know what I mean?
I mean, if we can take each character by in turn. I mean, you've got Commander Ivanov, who, he's like, everyone has had a boss like him.
Yeah.
I mean, in their entire employment, as everyone who's had that unreasonable boss who's just like, get back to work. What?
Yeah, we're here to make money. We're not here to have fun.
Yeah,
but through his interactions, he ends up by being very human.
Yeah,
especially with the progress from his story arc, you can tell that although he cares about money, you can see that he actually does care about the crew members as well. But that comes through later as you find out more about him.
Yeah, and how the story sort of almost forces that confession out of him in a way.
Yeah.
With the whole robophobia thing and the fact that he had to leave this person behind. It wasn't a case of he wanted to. It was like he had no other option, and it sort of haunted him ever since.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of his character, he's a very business kind of person, and it kind of the thing is, it works for what you've got. Yeah, as you said, it's like everyone's had that sort of boss, and so. So moving on to Paul next, the second command lady.
Toots.
Toots.
Who's Paul then?
Paul, Chief Mover Paul is the head security guy.
Okay. And he's the one who...
This is spoilers, so you might want to cut this bit out, but he's the one who ends up by being the secret agent looking for Taron Capel on the ship.
Yeah. He's the one who brings...
And he goes mental as well. He's also one of my favourite actors. Like, every time I see that actor in Doctor Who and in other stuff, he's always amazing as an actor.
Yeah, he's quality. He's really good.
So we can do Chief Mover Paul first, because he goes for a lot of character development, if you want to...
And it's almost like the most tragic sort of events happen to him, because he goes from being almost like the hero of the story to basically off his head by the end of it.
Yeah.
Being the one kind of on the Doctor's side, he's kind of trying to help and work out what's going on.
I agree with you there. He generally is the one who's looking at the situation through a realist's eyes. There's a point where they discover Cass's body, and Ivanov automatically thinks Leela's killed this guy.
Yeah.
And Paul's the only one who turns around and has a look at his body and looks at her and goes, "Well, you're stronger than you look." And then she turns around and she's like, "You're stupider than you look if you think I did that." And he was like, he's the one who reasons it like, to have actually overpowered Cass, she would have had to have knocked him out first and then strangled him. There's no way she would have been able to do it. So there's that. He's very much that cool. That he's one of the better characters for the from the perspective of like an investigator's eyes.
Yeah.
And then obviously he's the one who's the most uncomfortable about being on the sand miner, having to have recycled food and water and having the weird life. And even Leela talks to him at one point, and he's like, "Well, everyone dreams of bringing home a whole tank full of Lucanol and going home massively rich."
Yeah.
Completely made up mineral, but
Yeah.
So there is the geologist in me does find this story a bit unbelievable, but I kind of forgive it. I forgive the geology on it. Right? That's all I'm saying.
It's the fact that he says, I generally prefer people to robots. Do you know what I mean?
An
So
endless sand of moving sand of 100 miles deep. Bullshit, all right? It doesn't happen. Because sedimentation starts to happen and it starts to turn into rock.
He's not going to be happy with
weight. You don't suddenly have the sand constantly moving, all right? But I will forgive this and not talk about it anymore. The whole idea of a sand miner just doesn't work, all right? But I'm just going to let it go. Engage, cage rage. Anyway, that's enough of my gripe about my favourite story. It does have flaws, but I will let these flaws go. Okay.
Yeah, right. They can be acceptable for the greater good of the story. How about that?
And then ultimately, when he sees the robot that killed a particular character off screen, and this robot has been counted as being killed off screen because his head slightly smashed in. That's what sends him over the edge. He sees it and
he sees the blood of the hand. Yeah,
he loses his mind, and it's quite tragic because he's the most. He seems like the most screwed together, like the most put together man, and he's the most rational, but he's the one that goes mad. And that's what's quite tragic about the story.
It's almost more tragic than any of the actual deaths because it's like
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
They class it as robophobia that he can't deal with it. But the thing is, a robot died, and it's like you think that means he's afraid of. Well,
no, it's the realization that the robot's killed someone because the robot's got blood on his hands.
Oh, okay.
He sees that, and that sends him mad because he doesn't know. He still doesn't believe that robots can kill people, although he is open to the idea. But I think once he's confronted with it actually as being a potential thing, that's what sends him over the edge.
He's open to the idea. Yeah.
Well, it's based on the Uncanny Valley. Like seeing something that's supposed to look so real that it makes you uncomfortable because you know it isn't.
Yeah,
I mean, the Vok robots don't look like people, but I mean, it's a close approximation as you can get. Like I said, they're not pleasant to look at, apart from when the red eyes start to show, and then you know they're going to kill you.
Yeah. Well, they go from like. Have you noticed in that part 4 they go blue as well? No, I don't know whether they.
Well, no, it's the blue. It's the blue screen, so they can put the effect onto the eyes.
Yeah. It's just like they sort of forgot to put the red bit in there, but I thought actually the blue eyes looked cooler. It was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, just a brief side note. The costumes look great. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. It's kind of like, yes, the people aren't supposed to be human, but they are basically human, just in costumes, shoulder pads.
Yeah. Well, they're flamboyant. You know what I mean? It's like a certain amount of decadence to it. Like they are high-rising people who make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Decadence is a word that's going to come up a lot when we get to the world building, setting building section of this. But yeah, so let's move on from Paul now. Move on to Dask. This one is okay. Spoilers because fuck it.
Yeah, to be fair, at this point, if we're going to talk about characterization, it's unavoidable with Dask.
And at this point, the people that are going to be watching this will probably have already seen Robots of Death many times.
Probably.
Well, at that point, then, if anyone hasn't seen it, go and watch it, and then come back and restart the video.
Switch off the video now and watch Robots of Death.
Yeah, and then come back immediately.
Make sure you do switch off and come back.
Subscribe. Yeah. I have to get in there.
Right. So, spoiler twist. Dask is obviously Taran Capel. So you've got to kind of evaluate him as not kind of as two people, but you've got to kind of see the split personality, or at least sort of how he's presenting himself with that sort of the mask.
Well, I mean, he's the head technician for all the robots on the ship, so it ends up by being not that surprising that he is the protagonist. Antagonist.
Yeah. Well, and also, like I said, you see you do see the little seeds being planted. Like he's very much almost like the quietest.
He's got all the answers.
Yeah.
You notice there's a point where they discover the corpse marker on Chubb's back of his hand, and he's the first person to explain what it is, a robot deactivation disk.
Yeah.
And they call them corpse markers as a joke in the factory. Yeah. And he says it. That's his line. So you just kind of go, okay. And then even Ivanov and Paul talk about it, going, well, Dask knew what they are, so surely, maybe he's implicated. And of course he's going to know what they are because he's the head technician on the ship.
Yeah, because that's his job.
It's like the talk about it is too obvious that it could be him. And then later on, he's the one who fixes the Zeta links to be able to make the sand miners stop sinking into the sand. Yeah. So he saves everything.
When he goes off on his own.
And then he goes off on his own, exactly. So it's one of those ones where you kind of, all the way through it, he's right there at the right time, saving the day, looking like the hero.
Yeah. But even at first, when the Doctor's like, right, fight sabotage with sabotage, and even he's a bit like, it's almost like he kind of gives the game away a little bit when he's like, no, don't do that. But then he obviously then has to play along with the Doctor, so he doesn't look like he doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah, so it's actually quite a multi-leveled performance from... Damn, I wish I remembered the actor's name. Doesn't matter.
David something. I'll have a look in a minute.
I just know he's in Pirates of the Caribbean as well.
Comment section. Oh,
is he? Blake 7.
Well, I'll edit it.
So, and then he's completely barking by the end of it. Like, is he chewing the scene? Is he chewing the scenery by the end? I mean, is he completely like over the top?
Especially when his voice starts to change because of the gas, then he's just like, oh, come on, my brothers.
Spoilers.
When he's like basically like, oh, he's like family. He goes, oh yeah, robots must be free. No, they'll no longer be needed for humanity and all this sort of stuff.
Human trust.
Yeah, even though you're not.
No, I tell a lie. He's barking by the end of it. Yeah, he definitely is chewing.
Well, it's like we were saying before, and the bit where I was telling you about earlier, Harry, when which I didn't notice until I watched this back recently, where Tom Baker's talking to, the Doctor was talking to Ubisoft about Tarek Capel, and goes, yes, Tarek Capel, a mad scientist, a very, very mad scientist. And as he's saying that, he's looking directly into the camera. I've got a couple of things I'll have to put up later, but it's just like, very, very mad scientist. So he obviously was very, very mad.
Yeah. And this is again, it's kind of like in terms of sort of how he comes across. He's very stern. He's very sort of quiet, and it just kind of helps build that when the reveal happens that he is obviously barking mad. You can go with it, and you can believe that sort of person has kind of snapped in that regard, and especially when you hear the back.
It's a bit like the Dask side of his personality is like the act, isn't it? He's just putting that on to just to stay in the background until he fully reveal himself.
Yeah. And then we've got Toos.
Acting Commander Toos.
Who's really just caught up in the middle of it all. She's again, I suppose it's because of her position. She's not. She hasn't got anything secret about her character. So she's just kind of that. She's kind of the audience in the middle.
Almost like the
one that's kind of caught in the middle of it all and being like, "What the hell's going on?"
Yeah. She's a necessary character because after they kind of assume that Ivanov was the murderer, you need someone else to kind of be in charge of being that sort of person to the Doctor in terms of get information across in terms of exposition for the audience. And obviously, you need someone to do that, and that's what she's there for. Ultimately, there's no big secrets about her, and she seems like a vet, like someone who just knows what she's doing, got herself that job, but.
She's just genuine, really, isn't she? At the end of the day, she's like they're doing her job as she's supposed to do. There's no like hidden agenda there, really. Although even though Paul goes, everyone has something to hide, but she's like the only one who really doesn't.
Doesn't have anything. No, she doesn't have anything to hide. She's kind of what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And it's like episode 2.
Confident, you know what I mean? She's good at what she does. So.
Yeah. Episode 2.
I mean, do you really want to go into the detail of the other characters? I mean, the other characters don't really have. I mean, Isilda's probably the only other one that's important.
I wouldn't worry too much about And there is one other character we can talk about, and that is D84.
Ah, yes, my favourite robot ever. Do you know what? I'm really annoyed. I'm going to put this out here now. D84 should have been the companion.
What, instead of K9?
Yeah. D84 should have been a companion from after this episode. But that's just my personal thing. I always get really upset at the end with D84.
Yeah, it is sad because it's like he literally sort of served his purpose, but it was still sad, especially when the doctor's like, "Oh, well, your brainwaves will be fried or whatever," and he goes, "Don't worry, I'm not important." "Oh, well, I think you're very important." It's like, oh, and he always sounds very sad whenever he talks. It's like, okay, I will do that. It's just like, oh.
There has to be something said for all the voice actors doing the voices of the robots.
Yeah.
There's a certain innocence, as well as a certain thing that makes them quite sinister as well. So it's very difficult to get right. But I managed to find this kind of impassive voice for all of them. I mean, it's not the same voice actor. There are different voice actors doing the voices of the robots.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, the door is not a barrier, Commander Tooth. We have been reprogrammed to kill all humans. And you're just kind of like, oh.
But it's just like, this is what we're here to do. It's not like we're going to, it's not like, the angry across Daleks, exterminate. It's like, we're going to kill you now, so you might as well get on with it. You know what I mean?
Very
but D84, bless him, D for dumb. He doesn't speak.
Well, really and truly, it's D for detective. That's basically the sort of the missing link there. It's like, oh, okay, he goes, yeah, what? D for dumb, he can't speak. And when Leader goes, oh, someone told him that. So that's quite a nice little touch, I thought.
If I had killed him, wouldn't I have killed you too?
You too. And then there's that realization of, oh, okay.
It's funny because every time I watch that scene, I always feel like his expression changes, but it doesn't. It's just the lighting. So when the lighting catches the robot's face, makes it look like it looks more friendly. It's really funny. It looks more friendly when he says that line.
Yeah.
Just good TV making, to be honest. If they can do that and they can make it work in that way. Okay.
Or it might be just my mind's eye, Jack. It could be nothing to do with the lighting, and it's just something that I see because I'm like, oh, it's the 84.
I think the voice definitely helps. Like there's definitely more of an emotion in his voice than the others.
Yeah,
it's more innocent.
D4, I am not the Doctor. Could you try not to strangle me?
Right. Okay. I just killed an insect that's kind of climbing all over my shit.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of characterization. So we're moving on to sort of section 2 now. Setting and world building.
Well, the setting and world building, I mean, I've touched upon it. When they talk about the founding families, there's a little bit of thrown in there.
Shifting sand.
You
mean the 100-mile deep sand?
No. Don't do this to me. I'm not going there. Science and it's science fiction, all right? It's made up. It's how
another planet. Don't worry about it.
Culture intended the science was going to work, so I'm going to accept that that's the science in Doctor Who. Okay.
Yeah. Bob Holmes was scripted it, so it's fine. he okayed it, so no worries.
Doesn't even actually get So that's fine.
There's little touches that I really like. There's ones where there's a line that Tom Baker says about robophobia, and he goes, "The Lloyd call it Grimwade syndrome." And it's one of those ones. It's like, who are the Lloyd? But I mean, I know where the line comes from. Is that Innes Lloyd was a producer of Doctor Who, and Grimwade was another producer of Doctor Who, and they just throw the names in there just to make it cool. But within the context of the world, you'd imagine that the Lloyd was like some kind of medical practitioners who decided to call robophobia Grimwade syndrome. But it just sounds cool. It makes that line just that little bit more like, oh, okay, I didn't think of that, but that's just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, but it also reminds me of the when I think it was Joan, later on in the new series about throwing names together, and they call in the Human Nature family of blood, she's called her granddaughter ended up being called like Verity Newman. So they just basically throw the two names together because it was obviously the original producers. And it's like, okay, that's a nice touch.
Yeah.
Anyway, digressing. Carry on.
The thing is, it's kind of like the planet itself doesn't actually get a name, and that's fine. It's just a desert world. That's fine. It doesn't need
nothing grows. Well, he kind of alludes to it when he's just like, "There's no water here. Nothing grows. Nothing at all." And so you're sort of put in a kind of desolate wasteland.
The thing is, they never get off the ship, so it doesn't really matter. It's just
it could be Arrakis for all we care,
Storm Mine 4 is kind of effectively where we are, and it's kind of
Base Under Siege.
Is kind of the word that we've used a lot so far, and it's very, very appropriate, really, because when you think about it, and when you look at the bits and pieces you can see there, we talked about their lounge that the crew are in. It's sort of really quite loud, really quite nice. So the commander's playing chess with the robot, because rather than sort of doing the jobs until something happens, the robots are doing everything. They've developed a society where everything is being done for them, so they can lounge around. There's a good amount of world building, just kind of like, there's so many bits and pieces they talk about, and as you say with the Lloyds and the Grimwade syndrome, just the kind of how they treat robots and how robots are moving around, it does go to show that there's kind of the society is kind of stagnated a bit, because they're very dependent on robots in terms of how to get things done.
Yeah.
I mean, themselves, yes, they are involved in doing things, but you look at the Stormline 4 and how big it is, and okay, yes, if you imagine most of that is tanks for storing whatever it is whatever they're mining,
and keeping them afloat on the sand before they sink in.
Right. Running something like that is going to require.
The sandstorm bit is accurate, though, isn't it, Harry? Surely the sand. When they go, we get ripped to pieces because it could be going out.
You can. Sort of. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you've got 100 meters, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into it anymore. But yes, if you had a storm, and then if the sand was all moving, and you could, yes. Just leave it.
It's just nice. It's kind of, you do get a sense of that the world, there's more going on than just what's happening on that ship. Again, you made reference to the founding fathers of the society, that you can kind of, just in a few cutaway comments, because you wouldn't make full exposition about it, because you don't need to know exactly what their society is like, because that's not the point. The point is just a bit of setup so we know there's shit going on in the background, there's shit that's happening, just to help make it a bit more tension.
Fleshed out.
Well, just to give it context.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're thinking, well, why do we give a shit about people mining? Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like, oh no, you get a bit deeper into like why they're doing it, and because of the robots with them, how they're sort of they're crutches almost.
Yeah, when you get to the whodunit aspect of it, it's kind of like, because there's a bit more tension now through these bits and pieces, and this bit more development of the world around them. It's kind of, it does make it a little bit like, oh my god, it really could be any of them, really. Oh, except for the first week, so it bumped off in episode 1. But it could still anyone else. So, I hadn't watched this episode in a long time. I thought it was the security guy, Paul, for a little while, and it's like, okay, it's not.
Well, the thing is, he kind of gives you that impression, but that's part of his sort of, I don't know, espionage, as it were, why he's there.
He moves like a hunter.
Yeah, exactly. He goes, oh, I knew there was something about him. Oh, yes, you were right.
By the prick of my thumb, so he wishes to comes.
Yeah.
No, I can't, and neither can you.
Well, we've already the next 3 points would be themes, plot, and arcs and growth. Now, arcs and growth is what I already kind of covered with the characterization, so I don't think we need to cover that. The next one is plot, which is the story in itself is just, as we said, a whodunit, but it's just kind of how it's told is really kind of, that's really feel.
Well, it's sort of a whodunit mixed with like a robot, this almost dystopian future.
I look at it as it's a deterioration from the norm into absolute chaos.
Yeah.
So you've got the opening scenes where they're just chatting and it's all normal, and then someone gets killed by a robot. They have stowaways suddenly turn up. More robots start going bad, start killing more people, and then everything's like, if this situation doesn't get sorted out here, the robot civilization that everything's depending upon is going to fall apart because of killer robots. You know what I mean? It's the descent into the kind of like, it's really, really small, kind of like who done it? Oh, the whole world's going to end.
Yeah.
By the end
It's
of it,
almost like
the stakes are so high, you're just kind of like, oh my god.
It's like it goes from a kind of like a little utopia to like a massive dystopia.
Yeah.
So the last point then really is just entertainment value. Now I think watching
the dialogue alone is so on. It's so spot on. From like the first episode to the last episode, it's just so quotable. There's so many good lines that you just like. Oh, please don't throw hands at me. When Toos throws the robot hand at T-84, and he's just like, oh. Just little things like that. Goodbye, my friend. You know what I mean? How does a robot have the concept of friendship? Maybe there's more to him. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That was the whole point. That's the little sad intonation in his voice. There was another bit I got, but I didn't really pick up on before. Well, I did, but I forgot about the gem. It was it's like episode 4. It's just the Doctor and Leader are she's sort of like going about asking him about Dax. He goes, yes, Dax, and blah blah blah. Do you always talk so much? It's the way like she only asked him a question, and he should midway through his
he's getting annoyed.
So basically, do you always talk so much? And Leader's face is like, sorry. He's going. It's like an example of him going a bit nuts.
It's more that you have to realise at that point the Doctor knows the stakes. You know what I mean? He's really like, I've got to deal with the situation or it's the end of the civilization. You know what I mean? He starts to get this sense of urgency and he's just like, why are you asking me so many questions, God?
Yeah, exactly.
And the whole thing was thoroughly entertaining all the way through because it's kind of like the whodunit stuff. While a little cliche, there's nothing wrong with cliches if they're done well, and it's done really well.
Well, it's the fact that it doesn't, it deteriorates. That's what I mean. It deteriorates into madness towards the end, rather than just being like, this person did it. It was like, the whole world's going to end, and it don't really matter who bloody did it.
Yeah, exactly. Whodunits don't often involve, a fucking like, an end of civilization scenario. It's just a case of catch the person before they kill again, kind of thing.
So the dialogue is like, this is probably the most quotable episode of Doctor Who. You guys have pretty much repeated half the script already through various things.
Well, it just depends on whether it's homed in on this or it's followed you. So it just depends on which one of us is going to kill first. So many good lines. I just love it. It's just you just sit
I heard they cry. That was me. I heard they cry. That was me.
I heard they cry.
That was me. Let me in.
So I'm thinking out of the sort of the 6 points of story, I think it's kind of covered all of them really well. This particular episode. So it's kind of, there's not really anything. I would say it's kind of, in terms of as a successful story, all of them I think it is a very successful story, and I think it's done really well. And the fact that it's Harry's favorite episode ever.
And I can understand why, mainly because of the dialogue and the timing, especially with Tom Baker. He was properly in his fucking element and in his stride in this episode from beginning to end.
Also, it's the ensemble cast. It's the cast that sort of surrounds it that really helps it. Like it just makes any interaction between them just that so much better. It's a really satisfying story to watch.
Yeah, 100%.
Plus, I really love the Isaac Asimov stories. So the stories about robots killing people is always going to be up the street. And the thing is, I don't know why, I've always had an affinity for robots in stories, especially innocent ones. Like D84 kind of sits, I feel short, like a real place in my heart. I sort of go, oh, D84.
Yeah, he's definitely the tragic hero of the story, isn't he?
I definitely think that D84 is probably like influence why they did Kano. I'm not that I've watched any special features that said it, but I genuinely have this feeling that the D84 was that popular that they were like, yeah, let's get a robot
and Chameleon.
And Chameleon, yeah. Well, the less said about Chameleon, the better, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
What a failed experiment that was. Did you guys want to see some of my statistics I've made up for robots?
Yeah, go on
then. Are you going to let me share the screen? There we go. Bling! Statistics for robots are deaf. There we go.
It's actually making the channel a bit more professional looking here, Jack. This is great.
Well, I thought I'd try something like different. I mean, this is what I was planning to do when we did it originally, so that we would be able to sort of like, oh, look at this and visualize some of the concepts. Because I mean, my big part for me is like, when you look at classic Doctor Who, there was always the argument that it's really violent and, you know, unsuitable for families and whatever. And I'm like, I just want to disprove this idea. Anyway, we'll look at number of deaths in Robots of Death. Well, you've got 7 on-screen deaths and 5 off-screen deaths, so 12 deaths altogether.
I mean, compared to like Resurrection of the Daleks, it's pretty tame, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And then if you look at the actual percentage ratio of how many humans and robots die on screen, a lot more robots die on screen than humans.
Yeah,
I mean, up to 72% are robots deaths.
Yeah.
And they're varied, man. Robots get stabbed in the head. One gets his chest blown up. 2 get their heads blown off. That's a lot of robot. That's a lot of robot killing. I think there's a lot of robot bias going on here.
Oh god, yeah. Robot on robot massacres, especially when you get ones that like with the Doctor's hat and scarf, and he goes and tries to kill another robot who wants to kill, thinks he's the Doctor, and then tries to kill him. It's like, oh dear, they're killing each other.
That reminds me. It's another line. It's like, are they as nimble as they are
strong? I think
yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Because he's like, can I disguise one? And the other robots will not think it's him. And then lastly, my last slide. There we go. Humans to robots off-screen deaths. Loads more humans die in this story. We only get 1 robot off-screen death. And I'm not even entirely sure I should class the half-broken one that Borg kills off-screen as an off-screen death. But
so, gents, in conclusion, Harry, you want to go first?
My conclusion for Robots Death, obviously, we all know this, my favourite episode.
Yeah.
It's an episode that it always, like, I reach over to the shelf and I'm going to introduce Doctor Who or classic Doctor Who to someone. It's the first episode I usually will pick to watch. I think it's probably the finest example of classic Doctor Who. Like, if you want what classic Doctor Who means, Robots of Death, you're not very far away from the perfect story.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'd agree. It's very well written, very well paced. There's nothing in there that I would change or get rid of, or nothing that my brain is telling me, no, that doesn't make sense. I enjoyed it all the way through. I will continue to enjoy it all the way through every time I watch it in the future. And it was a treat to go back and watch it for this. I haven't watched it in a little while, and it's very fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot more I can add to that, really. I mean, as Harry said, it is a classic example of just golden age of Doctor Who. Really, the pacing's brilliant. The fact that it's a 4-parter, even though it doesn't seem as long as 4 parts. Strangely enough, it seems just like maybe a 2-parter, but it's because it's so engaging. You don't even feel the fact that there's 4 parts to it, because everything flows so well. Like we said before, with the dialogue, Tom Baker at his humorous best in this episode, without going as mental as he has done in some episodes, and some episodes to follow this one. He's very very well balanced. The quotable lines, just the base under siege kind of effect, which I love about Doctor Who anyway. The robot dystopian and the whole thing about, you know, the whodunit aspect of it descending into absolute fucking like catastrophic chaos towards the end. It's just, like you say, it's just got everything that you want in a good Doctor Who story. Yeah, there's not much I can really fault about it, to be honest. I know I can understand why, Harry, it's your favourite story. So we'll be doing out of 10 then.
Oh, for me, 10 out of 10. Easy.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. I'm not going to argue that.
Yeah, it is 10. I mean, I would say obviously Pyramids of Mars is my all-time favourite, and that's a 10 out of 10. But this, I can't deny a 10 out of 10 purely for just how good it is. I just prefer Sutek. But having said that, Robot it doesn't make it any worse. It's just great in different ways. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, cool. Good.
Nice. Right, now we're talking about next, like, other stories to do. What do you guys want to do next?
Is Claws of Axos on Motion Daily?
I don't know. Possibly.
Let me have a quick look now while the camera's rolling. Just because, you know, not that you sail the high seas for these things, but you know.
Not that you'd ever sail the high seas ever in your life, Jack. No. You mean you don't own this episode?
Well, I've bought it several times, a couple of times the DVD, because first time...
I can't find mine. Yeah, it's in one of the lost boxes somewhere. I'll probably watch it on BritBox, so, because it's all on there too. If I'm allowed to say that word on here, I don't know. Probably be alright.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Well, it's an official thing anyway, so.
Yeah.
And we're not monetized anyway, so like you said.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't matter. Fuck it.
Now, obviously, not that I would ever recommend this, but yes, Claws of Axos, the Claws of the Axos is on BritBox, so you know, looks like it's all there.
Is it because the Axons are a bit like the robots? They got that similar sort of look to them, kind of, you know, carry on the theme.
I mean, a monster design, it's an interesting one, and actual an interesting concept. I think there's quite a lot to discuss in a Claws of Axos, to be fair.
Yeah.
I
it's got the master in, so yeah. Do you want to carry on doing it like this, where we like record it and then edit it, or do you want to do a live one as well at some point? Or me and Jack crack on with the lives.
You guys can do live. I'm quite happy to do it.
Well, we've already done live ones. We'll do more live ones. In the future.
Or I could just say we're recording it and then it's actually live. No, I wouldn't do that to you, Harry. Don't worry.
No, it's just that I just got to get confident with like just talking.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it. That's the way. That's just
I'll do a couple of recorded ones, and then I'm happy to do live after a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, to be fair, me and Jack have only done, we've only done 2, so we're still quite new to it anyway. So yeah, it's all a learning process, a learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Hopefully we won't leave it this long next time to do it, because I think it's been what 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a little while as usual. Yeah, we said we were going to do more videos under lockdown, and it's turned out to be about the same amount about pre-lockdown. So we're going to get stuff in life happens that sort of gets in the way of this shit. But yeah, we'll try to keep on top.
Well, if we try and stick to I'm going to try and watch Claws of Axos over the next couple of days.
Yeah,
and then we'll just see if we can, get back together on here and
maybe do it once a week if you want, or once every 2 weeks.
I mean, I'm not doing anything, so
yeah.
This is it. I'm off Tuesday and Wednesday next week, so I could do an evening then. Alternatively, Saturday, Sunday of that weekend.
Yeah.
I'll be up, so it's I can do something then if that works better. So what fits?
Yeah, that's cool. Or we can do the Claws of Axos with Harry during the week, and then we can just do like a random live shit thing at the weekend if you want, and then Harry can join in the chat.
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll figure something out. But yeah, so Claws of Axos is up next.
Yes.
All right.
You okay?
Harry, thank you very much for joining us, our very special guest, and our regular guest, hopefully from now on. So that's awesome. Cheers for joining us, mate.
Pleasure, mate. Have a good one.
And you.
Yeah. Proper
Cheers,
crew.
Jack.
Cheers, Sean. Cheers, Harry.
Bye. Oh, it's empty. Right. That's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? Time to top it up.